Hey friends, welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to be talking about 13 PlayStation 1 shoot 'em ups. Let's go! Like all of our other videos, we're going to put the rating up in this corner so you can see what you're getting into if you decide to purchase the game. Other than that, let's get into it. The first game we're going to talk about is called In the Hunt, and this is a submarine shoot 'em up that's very reminiscent of Metal Slug series. In the Hunt is a fun two-player co-op shmup. You're controlling a submarine, which is definitely a unique take on the genre. Playing the game, you have two shots, primary being straightforward and secondary being the vertical shots. The vertical shot will shoot missiles up and drop depth charges down to deal damage with anyone directly below you. If you're not at the surface of the water, your rockets will stop there. However, you can deal with flying baddies by being at the water line, which allows your missiles to break the surface. It's definitely a different mechanic to have during gameplay. Couple that with the level of detail and the sprite work, and this is definitely a fun game to sit down and make your way through. The levels can take some time to get through and shouldn't be rushed. However, that ticker doesn't exactly stop either, so don't completely drag your feet. As for options, you have some that can be tweaked to help if needed. The difficulty can be adjusted from very easy, medium, and hard. The number of lives can be dialed up or down from 3 to 5. There's a few other options here as well, but nothing that drastically changes the gameplay. The length of the levels are just about right, taking about 3 to 7 minutes to get to the boss. Taking them down is a different matter. There are sort of mid-level bosses here, but you can just skip them by proceeding in the level if you don't want to deal with them. There's always something either coming at you or firing at you. Something will be dropped from above the water line or fired from beneath the surface. It definitely keeps you engaged. There are a few item upgrades that you can get as well as you're progressing through the levels, which will help dispatch the enemies. You will need to mind a few environmental obstacles as well as you're going through the different stages. However, running into the seabed will not cause damage to your sub. This isn't a bullet hell shoot 'em up, but the screen can definitely get crowded quickly. The enemy shot patterns aren't very diverse. However, there are quite a few different enemies to fend off, with unique shots being either dropped from above or coming at you horizontally. As for the different difficulty levels, we're going to show you the first boss with the 4 different sets so you can see what you're getting into. I would definitely recommend picking this up if the gameplay interests you. There is a copy on the PlayStation 4 that you can download digitally currently, so that might be a more readily accessible option for most. The second game on this list that we're going to talk about is called Philosoma, and it's another early shoot 'em up, and it has a cinematic flair to it that not many others have. One aspect of the gameplay is that the shmup game style changes as you're progressing through the stages. So what starts out as a vertical shoot 'em up then shifts into an on-rail shooter, then a horizontal shoot 'em up, then back to a perspective shoot 'em up. The constant changing definitely keeps you engaged in the game. One aspect of the cinematics of the game is that your wingman or air control will talk to you while the levels shift from one perspective to another. It's a fun addition the first few times you've heard it, however, after the 3rd or 4th time, it does get a bit old. The gameplay is fair, however, the number of unique enemies is a little bit lacking. As you're proceeding through the stages, you'll pick up different upgrades. Some are weapon upgrades, some are shield refreshes, and some are more bombs. That is one aspect of the game that I do really like, is that it's not a one-hit kill, so you can take, I think it's either 4 or 5 shots before they take you down. Even though you have a few lives here, the multiple hits do ease and extend the gameplay a little bit. The different difficulty options are easy, normal, and hard, which you can see some of the differences here. There is a limited number of continues, so that does make it a little bit more challenging. Overall, Philosoma is a good shoot 'em up, definitely different from most of the other ones, and I'm very happy to have it in the library. Third game on this list that we're going to cover is called Nanotek Warrior, and this is a tube slider shoot 'em up. At least the main stages are. The bosses are a little bit different, but it's definitely still fun. The game has 3 difficulty modes, easy, medium, and hard. They all start out fairly simple, but the normal and hard modes do ramp up fairly quickly. The other configurable option is the controller, which only lets you select from a few different preset configurations. There's also no need for a memory card here, as this game uses a password system. In addition to the level selection for the passwords, the game also has a few cheat codes too, one of which enables a memory card option if you really need it. Not sure if you'd consider that a cheat code or not, but the option is there. Overall, I dig this game. It's fast, the checkpoints are handy, and the boss areas are very unique from the rest of the gameplay. I never noticed any slowdowns or issues in terms of the speed of the gameplay, which is nice not to encounter this. When you beat the stage, then you're tossed in against the boss, and you're going to be flying around them, trying to take out their shields or take them out just by doing different shots. There might be some enemies that get thrown into the mix too, but it's pretty straightforward. The background music definitely has a quick sound to it, which helps add to the pace of the game. The graphics were well done in their polygonal glory. You gotta keep in mind the age of these games too when looking at them, and the other games and systems that they were on par with back in the day. Overall, it's a very fun game. There's 8 levels to get through. It's a good time. Fourth game in this video is Xevious 3D, and it actually comes with a couple different games, Xevious and Super Xevious, but we're going to spend the majority of our time on Xevious 3D. As far as options go, you've got easy, normal, hard, and very hard for difficulty, and the lives you can adjust from 1 to 5. I'm going to get this out right from the start. I'm typically not a big Xevious fan. However, I do enjoy this game. The sound effects are still really basic, and the music isn't anything to write home about. You'll get power-ups along the way, which either change your weapon type to something different or power up your current weapon. So find your favorite weapon color and rock it out. The blue will improve your regular shots, the green will do a laser shot, and the red does a homing lightning shot. The gameplay here is good, so if you can get past the audio shortcomings, then you'll probably enjoy this game. It's all 3D polygonal renderings for the stages, backgrounds, enemies, your ship, and the incoming shots. The majority of items do not have any texture except for the backgrounds, but that goes along with the whole Xevious style, and it looks very similar to the older games in that aspect. For the gameplay, you have 2 shots. One that takes out the flying enemies, and the other that drops bombs on the ground targets. The reticle for the ground targets isn't very far out in front of the ship, so taking out some targets may end up getting a little sketchy. The bosses are fairly easy once you know which shot needs to be fired and where. Overall, it's a fun game. The 5th game on this list we're going to talk about is called Centipede, and this is a classic remake of the original game. The game has 2 modes, a classic arcade mode and an adventure mode. We'll cover the arcade mode first. It's very true to the original game, and it's a great addition to this disc. This does have a 2-player option if that's of interest to you. Adventure mode is a little bit different. In my opinion, it's probably more a combination of Asteroids and Centipede than just being faithful to the Centipede gameplay. When you get into the playfield, you can move in any of the directions that you're facing, and that's where you shoot. There are also some power-ups that you can make use of to do multiple shots, which does help output the damage quite a bit more. You also have to rescue people and save buildings. However, when you shoot a person, they turn into 3 black mushrooms, and it's less bonus points you'll get at the end of the level. The cutscene animations are cute, but it doesn't add a ton to the game. The ship is also hard to control as well. Maybe it's a practice thing, but the turning just seems very off. In my opinion, they tried to take the game in a new and different direction, but I don't think it was really a better heading. Overall, they tried to do something different with the game, and I don't really think it went well. The gameplay's okay, it's just, I'm not a huge fan. But again, if it's something that you think you might enjoy, pick it up by all means. It's going to be on the cheap. Another classic remake that is on this list is called Galaga Destination Earth. Galaga Destination Earth is a newer version of the classic. When you're flying vertically and horizontally, the gameplay is clean and concise. Flying into the screen, a la on rails, it just seems that the shots coming at you don't seem to be targeted quite right. I just seem to get hit from nowhere a couple times. Couple that with the enemies that zip from one spot to another when they decide to come at you, and it's a bit frustrating. Also, you have to worry about items flying at you too. Pretty much anything that you think will damage your ship if it comes into contact with you, will. The perspective sections of the stages are too long, and the vertical and horizontal areas are too short. I know they were probably trying to go for look at us, look at our 3D stuff. I just give me good old-fashioned Galaga if I want to sit down and play that. Other than the on-rails mode of the game, it's Galaga. There's no options here to change up anything other than the control buttons. No difficulty settings, no weapon upgrades other than the smart bomb, and you can collect little plaques floating in space, but they really don't do much for you. Story-wise, you're just shooting the enemies down to save your people. The rendered cutscenes are done well, the gameplay just seems very lacking and disjointed in the perspective sections. The sound effects and music are alright, but it doesn't really do all that much for the game. I think they really missed the mark on the audio too, because that Galaga sound, the theme song, or whatever you want to call it, is just so... They really could have leveraged that a little bit more, I think. Next game on the list that we're going to talk about is called Gekioh Shooting King. And this is a fun one. Off the bat, I was playing this on my PlayStation 2, and the game uses a severe overabundance of vibration. So unless you really enjoy that, I recommend turning that off. The gameplay and mechanics are alright. The graphics look decent, and the sprite work has a nice look to it. Couple that with the parallax scrolling, and it has a good bit of detail to it. You don't have any options as far as the ship selection goes. However, as you progress through the stages, you will get different upgrades for different weapons. One is an electrical storm of some type, another are missiles, and another is just a regular shot. Each one of them also has their own bomb style too. So one does a laser beam up the middle of the screen, another is a bomb blast based on wherever your ship currently is located, and the last one does a few laser blasts vertically based on where your location is. The game does have a few slowdown issues going against it, or really for it, depending on your skill level, so bear that in mind. The music is nothing fancy to write home about, but it does have a quick tempo to it, which helps move the game along. There's no environmental hazards you need to worry about here. It's just the enemies and then the incoming shots that it will take you out. As for difficulty, you have 3 options here: Gekioh mode, easy mode, and hard mode. I'm showing the first boss here based on those 3 difficulty levels on the screen. As for the bonus modes, well, there's a pocket mode, which is like an old school Tamagotchi, a comical mode where the sound effects are different and someone is just sporadically laughing at you, a stingy mode where you don't get any power-ups and you only have one ship. There's a no mercy mode where the shots come at you super fast. So fast that you have to keep moving, and not just in any direction. If you're moving incorrectly, you'll still get hit. There's a slow mode where everything moves very slowly and the sound effects are all horror themed for some reason. The last one is an ancient mode, where it's like regular gameplay, but there's a sepia filter slapped on top of it. Of these bonus modes, I think the pocket mode is my favorite. It's a fun game, and if you can get it for cheap, I would highly recommend getting into it if you're seeing the gameplay and you think it's something you'd enjoy. Next game we're going to talk about is called Einhänder, and this is one of the better PlayStation 1 shoot-em-ups. In this game, you're piloting one of 3 different ships. Along with that, you've got 3 different difficulties to select from, being easy, normal, and hard. Firstly, the stages are beautiful. There's a ton of detail that they put in here, and you'll notice that as you're playing through. The billboards lighting up in the background, the buildings, or the debris rushing by. For most of the game, it's a side-scrolling shoot-em-up. However, it does change its perspective just enough to tweak the gameplay a bit, which is very well done. You have no shields of any kind, so running into an environmental object, an enemy, or their incoming shot will do you in, causing you to restart from a nearby checkpoint. The mechanics here are a little bit different. So some of the enemies, when you take them down, will drop a weapon, which you can then pick up. So you'll have your regular shot and then this weapon, whatever you pick up, be it either the Wasp or the Vulcan or a missile launcher. After that, if you pick up a second one, your regular shot will be replaced with that new one. So you might end up with a Vulcan and a Wasp, or a Vulcan and a missile launcher. They just change. So, and when one empties, because they only have a certain amount of ammunition, you'll go back to having your regular shot. Pretty cool. It's different. Something else is you can flip-flop your weapons. So the weapon on top might be shooting at an angle, and you can swap the position of the weapon so that it's on the bottom and it'll fire in a straight line. Some of the weapons do better on top or on bottom, depending. Overall, the game is an absolute blast, and I would highly recommend it if it's within your budget. Now we're going to talk about a game called Asteroids. And this is another one of those classic remakes. I've got a lot in this video. It's Asteroids, and we'll show some of the gameplay. As far as controls go, a preset couple, or you can customize it however you'd like. There are 3 ships to choose from. Each has their own strengths and weaknesses, so choose best to your playing style. The game's premise is that you're in an asteroid field, and your job is to destroy them without destroying yourself in the process. So the game mechanic here is that the screen loops. And what I mean by that is when something flies off the left side of the screen, it's going to continue on from the right side. Same thing with the top or the bottom. That includes the asteroids, comets, other spaceships, your ship, your shots, whatever. There are some different asteroid types that they've added just for some flair, but the most part of the game, it's just like the arcade. It's fun, but there's really no depth here. It's just a straight up remake of the original, which is good. It's got better graphics, obviously, but that's about the extent of it. If you're a super Asteroids fan, this might be in your wheelhouse. Otherwise, I think I could find a better way to drop $8. Now we're going to talk about a game called Raystorm. And this is another good polygonal game. Raystorm is a fun shmup that has a lot of charm to it, from the polygonal ship and early 3D explosions, and detail of the multi-levels of the enemies that are firing at you. In this example of the 4th level, the multi-level fighting setup really comes into play. Almost too much, as you'll end up locking onto a ship way far out in the distance, and you're never going to take that thing down. Regarding difficulty for Raystorm, there are 8 different levels to select from. However, 1 to 4 are considered training mode, and you will not be able to get past level 4 in order to continue playing. You can change the difficulty of each individual level. Not sure exactly why you would want to do that, but that option is here. Same goes for the number of lives as well. So when you crank it above 5, you go into like a training mode versus the arcade mode. At times, the game almost feels like an on-rails shooter. The lock-on shot definitely does quite a bit more damage than a regular shot here. However, in order to lock on, the ship needs to be fairly close to the enemy. So there is definitely a risk versus reward in using the strategy. There are times when you increase your altitude and have an easier time using your special shot. Some of the enemies you will never be able to shoot with the regular shot due to the difference in altitude. So this is where that control comes into play. The soundtrack is definitely quick and synthy and has a decent beat to it. There will be a bit of memorization here regarding the enemy patterns, as well as knowing where they come out of and what their shots are going to do, just like any other shmup. There aren't any environmental concerns here to worry about, at least until you get to the asteroid belt. But the enemies will fly right into you, or vice versa, and then you'll be down a ship when that happens. The 2 modes of gameplay are arcade and extra mode. There's not that much extra in the extra mode, so yeah. One of the aspects of the game that I did like is that the themes of the levels are all fairly unique. Yeah, there's a few space levels and water levels. However, they're different with the tactics you need to use to get past them. It's not just a dodge fest. Overall, Raystorm is definitely a fun game, and I would definitely recommend picking it up. However, there's a couple different ways you can do that. You can get it on the PlayStation 1, or you can get it on the Taito's Legends Pack number 2. And that's for either the PlayStation 2 or the original Xbox. So you have some options. Next game on the list is called Shooter Space Shot. And this is definitely on the more budget side of the shmups. Not saying that in a negative way, but it just is. There is no difficulty setting here. It says on the back cover of the game that the difficulty is adjusted in real time as you play. Okay, you don't have your choice of ships either, but oh, there's cinematics. They're decent enough, and they've got voiceovers in Japanese. Okay, well, at least we've got it in subtitles. That'll work. The game's controls are fairly simple in that you have a normal shot and a missile or Vulcan shot. You also have 2 outriggers that you can adjust their spread shot, so you can have them shooting more forward, wider angle, even behind you. So there is that. However you want them angled, you can position them. That's where your setup is for the whole game. There's no power-ups here at all. There's no environmental obstacles you need to worry about, so you only have to focus on the enemy ships and their incoming shots, and you'll be alright. As for gameplay, I didn't see any slowdowns here until the bosses explode, which they did in great PS1 style. Being critical here, I think they could have done a little bit better job with the textures being on the different sized objects. You can see on this one that it's huge, and then on other items it's more appropriate. But it's being super critical. The bosses are a fun fight to get through as well. Their tactics aren't overly complex either. but they do ramp up as you get further into the game. There isn't much here in terms of story depth. They tried to toss in humor into the cutscenes, however it just seems a bit juvenile, coming across as two boys snickering to each other about an inside joke, or unsuccessful attempts to make themselves seem cool. There is also a training mode here if you want to put your skills to the test. They each pose a different scenario for those that want to push this game to its limits. Very budget, but I'd pick it up if I didn't have it already. 12th game on this list we're going to cover is called Darius, and I love me some killer space fish. Darius is a multiplayer horizontal shoot 'em up that is a wonderful addition to the gaming library. There's 3 different modes to explore here: arcade, beginner, and a versus boss mode. The movie cutscenes are a fun addition to this already spectacular game, but you don't need to see them to get the gist of the story. If you feel the need to watch them again at will, you can go into the options sections and they're viewable from there. Setting the difficulty options, they range from super easy, very easy, easy, normal, hard, very hard, super hard, and main. For the arcade mode, you can adjust the player stock from 1 to 9, as well as the credits from 1 to 9, and the capture balls from 1 to 6. In the beginner mode, you can actually adjust the player stock and credits up to infinite, so you don't have to worry about dying at all, ever. For both the arcade and the beginner modes, you have an option for branching paths. After each boss, you have a choice which direction you want to go in. Also, at some points during the regular stages as well, you'll be presented with a choice of 1 to 2 directions. This is nice if you have an issue with a specific boss, you can just avoid him. Here's the first boss and a few of the different difficulties. The other gameplay mode is a versus boss mode. This may surprise you, but in this mode, you go up against the bosses. I know, right? I was kind of confused at first too. One gameplay mechanic is capturing enemies, and when that's done, they will fight with you for a period of time. The background music and sound effects are well done for this shmup. The graphics are done superbly as well. From the boss intro with their cinematic flair, to the post-boss fights areas where you're blasting off into the next area of choice. The bosses are beautiful, and they're all very unique from each other, both in their look as well as their attacks and how you have to take them down. It's really cool. Some of the levels do have environmental obstacles, such as the exploding planet or the ground cropping up to take you out if you're not paying attention. You can pick this game up on the PlayStation 1, however it's also available, like an earlier game on this video, on the Tato Legends 2 for the PlayStation 2 or Xbox, so that might be an easier, cheaper way to pick it up. Last game on this video that we're going to talk about is called R-Types, and this is another compilation game. So you're actually getting R-Type and R-Type 2. In the first R-Type game, you have a difficulty option setting of normal or hard. You can also adjust your lives from 1 to 5. And you can punch in as many credits as you want to, so it's not, you don't have to worry about dying or resetting, because you're going to do a lot here, because this is a hard as nails shoot 'em up. It is a 2-player horizontal shoot 'em up, so you can bring a friend to enjoy in the frustration. The Ars library has details about the genealogy, history, and enemy data from the game. It's interesting for a deeper dive into the information about the game series. Starting with R-Type, this game is brutally hard. I would hate to tell you just how many attempts it took to get me past the 3rd boss. It was just wrong. But each time I did, I got a little bit further than last time. Or I learned something from the previous run. It's hard, but it is fair. The sprite work here is beautiful. Seeing the colors and the lack of loading screens keep you on your toes. I like how the star field simulates the parallax scrolling effect as well. As for environmental concerns, anything you can touch will kill you. So the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen, the ships, anything that comes flying at you, anything and everything. It will kill you. Talking about weapons, you have a rapid fire option, as well as a charged up shot, which will do quite a bit more damage. Catching upgrades will change the shots of your little force ball thing. It will shoot one way when it's attached to you, either on the front or back, and then another way when it's thrown or ejected from your ship. Each upgrade changes the ball's shot to a point. It starts with a fire ejection that moves along the walls, then it changes to a circulatory plasma-looking shot, then the blue ricochet lasers. Moving on to Art Type 2, the graphics are a bit improved, but it's still hard as hell. The mechanics are all the same from the first game to the next, and it will take you just time to memorize what the enemies do and how they shoot and where they're going to move to. The game is great, and it is hard. Just be mindful of that if you're looking to get into this. If the gameplay you're seeing here looks like it's something you would enjoy, by all means pick it up. However, bear in mind that on the PlayStation 4 and the Nintendo Switch, there is a game called R-Type's Dimensions, which you can pick it up. It's the exact same game. So if you don't have a PlayStation 1 or a way to play PlayStation 1 games, that might be an easier or more viable option for you. All right, friends, there you go. 13 shmups for the PlayStation 1. I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please give us that thumbs up. Lets me know I'm doing okay. If not, leave a comment in the comment section so you can critique me and tell me what I'm not doing right or what I could do better. Other than that, hope you have a good one. Be good to each other. Thanks for watching. Shadow.